Welcome, TREADLYFE, back to our series as we delve deeper into the world of motorsports. You're going to be right there alongside Kyle Loh as he trains with World Speed and SSI Racing, traveling the road to Formula Racing with us. Now that we've introduced a little about the league, the teams, and Kyle, we want to see what it's like from the driver's perspective. We're here to find out what the biggest challenges are in a racer's career on the track and off. Rounds 3 and 4 take us to the middle of nowhere, California, and we're about to find out how qualifying went. Hey there, TREADLYFE. We are back at Formula 4 and we're out here with Kyle Loh at Buttonwillow Raceway in Southern California this time. So Kyle, tell us a little bit about your last session. How did it go?
So the last session was our qualifier session for Formula Pro USA round 3. Like, the way it went for me, it was a little bit frustrating because I was like a pretty far off pace. But at the end of the day, I reached my goal from yesterday's practice to hit my marks. Yeah, that's all that we were really trying to do in the end, is like reach our goals and move on from there. So we usually set our goals after our first session of the day because we identify the most significant advantage that I have as a driver. We just based the goals off of how I'm driving the track, and today the goal was that I wasn't hitting my marks, so we had to work on that all day and finally got it down during the qualifier, so I'm happy with that.
So what were today's challenges on this particular track?
I think the biggest challenge today was carrying really high rolling speeds through some of the corners, like a big long sweeper called Riverside and then a big hill called Phil Hill. As not only do I have to hit my marks there and get my racing line just right, I also need to carry the rolling speed through the course and get that perfect exit and increase my minimum mid-corner speed. Pretty confident we'll go into tomorrow with the good set of tires.
So do you switch tires like every 2?
Usually what the process is during a test day, in the middle of a test day, we'll probably switch tires because we can't run a whole day like on used tires from beginning to end because they just wear so quickly if we're driving them to the limit. So what we do on test days is we'll start off with a used pair and then we'll switch to new sets in the middle of the day when we feel like, okay, we're not going to go anywhere with these sets anymore. It's time to put on stickers. On a race weekend, we'll usually run the whole test day on the used set just to get the driver used to the track. We want to save the newer set of tires for the qualifier, which is how we determine where we start based on our lap times.
So was there anything in particular that happened during this session that was sort of interesting?
Well, I did another 360-degree rotation. I'm convinced that I did it on accident. Charlie and Kyle think otherwise.
We think it's on purpose. This is 2.
If I lose it a third time and I save it somehow, then it's not an accident. But
is it something? It's probably something you picked up from karting. Do you think?
I've never really had an experience where I've lost traction like that in the go-kart. Whenever I'm training with Jason from SSI Racing School, like I'm always pushing the car towards the limit on the simulator because there's less consequences if I put it in the wall. And constantly I'm like catching these slides. And I think I got some of it from training with Jason.
How do you feel like the simulator training is helping you?
Simulators are really interesting because you can have access to all these real-life tracks. At the same time, you also have access to these pretty realistic car physics. What the simulator training does for you is it helps teach you these different techniques that you can do with your braking, with your throttle and steering input. You could carry that over to driving the real car and see if it works out. I mean, if it's all like not luck, and it would be a nice skill to have, but I prefer that the car doesn't spin around.
It feels like a game to your brain, but your body doesn't know the difference. That's exactly why simulators have been used in training from combat to flight. Through simulators, situations become instinctual through repetition. Because of something all of us humans have called neuroplasticity, whatever we are doing at the time, we're training our brain to become better at it. You heard Kyle attribute his recoveries to the simulator and the training he's been getting with Jason Shad of SSI Racing. Jason is the #1 pro driver in America on top-rated software Assetto Corsa, used by drivers worldwide to learn tracks, car behavior, and planned warfare, strategies. According to the company, during the development of Assetto Corsa, Lamborghini's own racing drivers helped with the realism of digital action while they were switching between simulator and Huracan GT3 on the circuits. This is the software you're seeing Kyle drive with today. What does SSI stand for?
SSI actually stands for Senna Staffing Improvements. It's another business that I had opened in the recruiting business. And when we started this racing school, we thought, well, let's just call it SSI.
Excellent name for it, because you certainly are the Senna of simulators.
I don't know about that, but thank you for the compliment.
Why did you decide to start this company?
For my son, this kid right here. I mean, it was essentially go out and spend tens of thousands of dollars on a go-kart and, you know, have him possibly say, that's not something I want to do, or invest a little bit on developing him as a driver on a simulator and see if he's interested in progressing from there. So, well, that's kind of how it started. Is I wanted to test it out first to see, is this a legitimate place to teach someone how to drive? And because I grew up with video games where it was pretty limited, you know, the physics and the feedback and all of that was not quite realistic enough. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that technology had advanced 20 years later where it was possible to do that.
So SSI, it's not just a simulator. What does SSI fully entail when it comes to driver training on the simulator?
We strive for combining simulation training with go-kart training, and everything is revolved around cost. We wanted to find an alternative cost for anyone who is interested in progressing their career or starting a career, to not have to pay the $20,000 racing school for 3 days. Very limited. You're cramming a lot of learning into really 3 days. It's an ongoing development, and so the reason we chose simulation is for obvious reasons. The cost is much lower, and go-karts as well. It's also still relatively low in cost. So combining those two to develop their skills was basically our philosophy. How can we make this affordable for the masses?
Yeah, because this sounds like it really is the setup for somebody who's aiming towards getting into Formula Racing is the karting and the simulating.
Yep.
When I keep being told. So
yeah.
How does the karts play into all this? What kind of karting do you offer people who also do your simulating?
Yeah. All the range of the spectrum. We have karting from just the really junior Briggs 4-stroke 12 horsepower all the way up to what you see here, which is the ICC 50 horsepower 120 mile-an-hour go-kart. So, and everything in between. We have access to any go-kart for any skill level.
What is the rubber chicken for, you wonder? Driver training, of course. Among the skills necessary to be a driver hurling a chunk of metal and carbon fiber at 200 miles an hour is emotional resilience. The focus to withstand a rubber chicken or an engineer squawking in your ear as you enter a turn. But in all seriousness, this is serious. I mean, how many hours do you think an F1 driver spends in a simulator? I can tell you that it adds up to about 30 days out of their year. Trainers spend just as much time monitoring the racer like you can expect Jason to, and then have him tell you what you don't want to hear but need to if you want to shave those seconds off of your lap time.
Our go-to at the moment is Assetto Corsa, simply because we feel it gives a little bit more accurate feedback. You know, feedback through the steering wheel is the same as having a nice monitor that displays the information. You want maximum information on the steering wheel so that you can develop the proper coordination. And if you're lacking some of that, and you do that for a year, then you potentially lose that wiring of the brain when you go in the real world. And Assetto Corsa seems to be a little bit closer in that area, but it also has its limitations. There's no real competition platform that's out there for the world to use. Iracing is a subscription-based platform. They are very detail-oriented in terms of laser scanning all of the racetracks so that every millimeter of bumps and undulations are all recorded onto a digital platform and then converted. and as well as the artwork that's around, trees, which is also important. You have all these points of references that are necessary if you're going to be driving on the real track. Laguna Seca's corkscrew, for instance, the tree needs to be in the right place. A lot of people aim for the tree. In addition to laser scanning all of the race cars that they have available, all the way down to the bolts. So, I mean, when they put it back together in a digital platform, it's as accurate as possible when you go to make adjustments to the suspension, tire pressure, ride height, all those fun things. It's going to measure it accurately so that it translates. You make an adjustment, changes the handling characteristic of the car. You know, those are the two main ones that we use. There's Project Cars 2, which, you know, they've kind of addressed the artwork and the really super high definition detail and flashes and reflections and rain, night and day, but they are lacking a little bit more on the force feedback, which we feel is, for what we do, is more important than having the really fantastic artwork that's around.
Is it a very high likelihood that I'll be able to drive my car on your simulator?
Oh, I mean, there are literally several hundred, you know, possibly, if we look at it, maybe 500-600 cars to choose from. It's a very high likelihood that you will. You know, a lot of race car drivers will request what the modern cars are today, the GT3 cars, the Formula Mazda. But I mean, we have developed so many different programs specific to everyone's needs. There's a program that we're running with a gentleman now who just wanted to learn how to downshift. And so thankfully we have, you know, both Subarus and BMWs on our simulation platform. We put them on there and we teach him how to do proper heel and toe downshifting, go through those exercises so that he doesn't grind his gearbox up and burn his clutch. And you just go over these exercises, develop the right coordination so that when he gets to the racetrack, he knew how to heel and toe already, but he was doing it when he wasn't at threshold braking. It's a lot different when you're under heavy braking, having to coordinate those efforts, and it's very surprising how many people come in and say, I know how to heel and toe, but on the racetrack they're heel and towing with light braking and braking, you know, 50 meters earlier than everybody else, and then trying to wonder why their lap times are 2 seconds off the pace. It's a great environment to do that. You eliminate all of those potentials of damage. But the idea is to make everyone the same, bring everyone to the same level of interpretation. So you'd mentioned from a visual perspective, well, since most simulators don't have accurate motion, because a lot of race car drivers, myself included, from the 80s and 90s, relied heavily on, you know, the pitch and yaw motion to react. And what I think we've discovered is that there's a piece that's missing from that, which is the visual aspect. And on the simulator, you're doing exercises with your eyes to understand, if I see the horizon, even just make a slight shift, especially for these high downforce cars that, I mean, they just snap. And if I can catch that before I rely on, you know, my internal gyro to interpret that, if I can work on that, I have an edge, because now I can react quicker before I actually feel it. Because sometimes in these very high grip, high downforce cars, when you lose the grip, it's nearly impossible to regain it. So you'll see all these slow steering, but once it gets to a point of non-recovery, which the window is so much smaller in a high downforce car, you would need these exercises to kind of compensate for that, and that's all visual.
Yeah.
That's what we work on here in the simulator.
I'm looking at your YouTube channel.
Sure.
You guys are big in the online racing world.
I mean, you know, it's a means of establishing credibility. I think it was the primary objective for me, at least. Fun factor, you know, what's the maximum I can get out of this? How do I stack up against the world? And so I think that we've been lucky enough to have the right people around us to give us the right advice. Utilizing a lot of the things that we've learned, I'm a much better driver now than I was in my karting days. I mean, I was a semi-professional for 10 years in karting, but I've discovered magnitude X probably 5 times training on a simulator, self-taught training, and then learning with my son as well. All of these little weaknesses that I never really realized that I had. And so I think that now that we can apply that to some of these world record attempts or competition online competition, it really translates, because you know it really wasn't. It may sound pompous to a certain degree, but it really wasn't that difficult once we just executed logical steps that we need to go through to achieve lap times. And you know, we were quite surprised when we ranked as high as we did in our first attempt, and we're still chipping away at it, but yeah.
It's like doing the same thing Kyle's doing out there on the track, just hitting every mark.
Hitting every mark.
And when you're hitting every mark, that lap time's just come right down.
And it's a sequence of events, because I think that, myself included, I discovered that, you know, although I had some success in karting before, I was really kind of analyzing corners out of the right sequence. You know, I wasn't focusing on step by step, and I may skip a step, and when you skip a step, you still make it through the corner, you still have relative speed, but maybe you don't exit as good, or you don't, you know, you wear out your back tires more than your front tires. And so there was a lot of things that, you know, that I can really get into the minutiae of detail and bore everybody to death, but that works, that it actually works.
Do you feel like there was anything from Tuesday's training that you took away from it that actually helped you here this weekend?
So something that Jason told me about the Tuesday training was something about how Iracing was always the fastest in Monaco, because he'd be the one getting the closest to the barriers than any other driver out there. And that's just saying that he's followed the perfect racing line throughout the whole race. And that related directly to my big issue this weekend, which Kevin's pointed out. I wasn't hitting my marks every single time, which I have to be doing if I want to be consistent. So the goal for the whole weekend was just to hit my marks, while at the same time paying attention to all these other different things.
The gist, other than going into supreme detail of what we do here, which I find fascinating and equally interesting, because there's a lot of skeptics that are out there, and there should be. Everybody should do their diligence and proper research. But my argument for that is you can't argue with results. And in the last 4 years that we've been doing this, it's been great results. I mean, results of people that have actually saved tens of thousands of dollars that they would have spent. And some people have actually went through our program and decided that, you know, racing is not for them right now, or maybe never again. But they didn't spend $50,000 to $80,000 to find that out. Yeah. You know, they spent a fraction of that, and they had fun. And I think that's the biggest part of what we try to do here, is try to make the learning as fun as possible. You can't get more fun than playing a video game, which is how people will look at it in the beginning, and then slowly they start to understand that it's not a video game, it's a tool, and it's a pretty powerful tool if it's used correctly. And I've built a process around this tool, spent a lot of my time and money and effort and research to make it as usable, as realistic, and as fun to learn as possible.
In just short sessions, I watched Kyle improve right before my eyes in a matter of laps. You really can't argue with results, and I can't deny that this is definitely fun. I had a great time hanging out and seeing their driver development in real time, and I look forward to hanging out with SSI Racing in the future to bring you our video on the science behind the simulator's effects on the brain. Hey there, TREADLYFE. We're back at Buttonwillow. It's on Saturday now. We just experienced a fantastic race in round 3, and we're back here to talk to Kyle about how he feels about round 3. So, how did it go out there?
Yeah, it was pretty hectic out there on the first lap, because there was a lot of dust from the group ahead of us. It was quite a slippery moment through the technical cotton corners. We saw a couple of guys spin out there, and yeah, from here on then I just kept my car on the racetrack and ended up finishing 3rd.
Is it pretty hard, the visibility out there when it's that dusty?
When there's a big dust cloud out there in front of you guys, like you can only see what's in front of the dust cloud, and then when you're inside the dust cloud itself, you got to know where the track is headed, and hopefully there's no cars facing the other way. That'll be pretty bad. Yeah, for the most part, we just charge into the dust cloud and nothing happens, thankfully.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Which turns were the most dicey?
The most difficult corners that whole race. Turn 2, it's a tight bowl and going up the hill. There was a lot of dust collected the whole time, and especially on the curbs and at a place like this, dust on the curves will make it extra slippery. Yeah, I think just my inexperience led to me not quite pushing the car to its full potential. I had no idea what the car would do if I went full on into the dirt. But it was fun. I got some more experience under my belt. Yeah, just 3rd place is the icing on the cake.
About going into tomorrow? We have one more race left, round 4. How are you feeling about that?
A little sad that it's almost over, that there's just one session left. I was hoping to get some more time out there, but that's how it is in the Formula Pro.
Any advice, anything you would let somebody know that's just now getting into this? Any words of encouragement for them?
On your very first race, obviously, your competitors are going to have so much more experience under their belt, because they've been racing for years and years and years. Like with the situation I'm in, this is my very first year racing in a car. Yeah, I started out 5 seconds off the pace of a really competitive driver. Sometimes I'm still 5 seconds off the pace, but I think I've knocked out quite a bit of time this weekend. Figured out some really basic things that just played key roles into my development. So just focus on the basics first. Just take your time. There's no rush.
Formula racing is warfare. It takes more than just raw strength of horsepower to come out ahead. It takes a winning strategy. Driver training is all about the strategy it takes to win, from how the car is set up to the marks the driver must hit in order to optimize time around the track, and critical thinking is required here. Where do you find world-class driver training? World Speed Motorsports out of Sonoma, California. Headquarters located at the old Sears Point, now known as Sonoma Raceway. But World Speed is here, there, and everywhere across the U.S. supporting racers from coast to coast. They gather and travel from afar race weekends to assemble a pro team of ex-racers, engineers, and technicians, all headed by President Kyle Loh. This is Kyle. Kyle rocks. At 18, he was already winning wrenching awards and championships, and since '96 has been creating the strong environment that's producing star racers in Indy Lights, Ferrari Challenge, IMSA Force GT3, and some other high-profile series. I asked Kyle a little bit about what it's like working with World Speed.
So all of World Speed's training methods occur like at a race event or at a test day, so we have to get the real thing and get out there and drive. Oftentimes we'll watch video of me driving, or we'll look at the data and identify, okay, like we're going to compare your lap time with another driver's lap time, and then we're going to look at the brake traces and throttle input, and we're going to figure out, okay, do you need to get on the brakes later, and can you carry that rolling speed, or do you need to get back to power sooner, or are you getting back to power too soon and you need to back it up? So they go into like a lot of tiny details, but there's always going to be one goal that we have to meet towards the end of the day.
So they set you a new one pretty much every time you come off the track?
Yeah, usually every test day or every race weekend we have a goal. The progress is made when we reach the goal. Number one focus is on the driver. They look at the driver, like where their hands are doing and where they're looking, and they listen to the car when it brakes and when it applies throttle again, because we can't get a camera of our feet very easily. But what a lot of the coaches do is they observe what the driver's inputs are, and then they observe how the car is responding to these inputs. This sort of stuff isn't easy, and yeah, I just have a lot of respect for all the racing teams out there that put in a lot of hard work for the drivers. Yeah, it's just this incredible skill that the team has to get the drivers out there. Even if they get a bad wreck on the first day, their weekend isn't over even if the car's completely torn up. The team's going to find a way to get it back together, whether it's replace it with another car or fix it.
Yeah, because this seems like it's a really big team effort here with World Speed.
Yeah, this whole weekend is intended to be an educational weekend for both the drivers and the team.
Their on-site driver training is only part of what you see going on behind Kyle here. WorldSpeed has been prepping and maintaining race cars since 1991. Most recently, the construction of the Gen 2 Formula Speed, a car created to limit the cost of replacement parts to keep it below $90,000. A 200 horsepower Mazda 2-liter makes this 1,100-pound car a low-flying rocket, but built with safety in mind from a space frame chassis enveloped in Kevlar. This option opens up racers to yet another league on the schedule for WorldSpeed, the Formula Car Challenge Series. Let me introduce you to one of the Formula Car Series drivers. This is Race. Yeah, y'all, I said race, and that's exactly what he does. At 13, he was given special permission to attend Skip Barber's Advanced Racing School, and at 14, Race made podium 5 out of his first 6 SCCA Spec Miata races. Selected to win the VMB scholarship, it brings him to the Formula Car Challenge, where, as you can see, he's having no trouble finding his way back to the podium. We'll be meeting with Race to chat about his racing experience in the next episode and learning more about how WorldSpeed benefits racers, from those just getting started to veterans returning for a second chance. Just got done with one of his F4 races out here at Buttonwillow, and we're going to talk a little bit about his day, and then we're going to allow you guys to ask some questions. So go ahead and start typing it in. How's it going, Kyle? How was today's race?
I think today's race was quite successful because Kevin and I set the goals for today's race, and the real test wasn't quite to get results, but just to see if I could meet those goals while at the same time maintain everything else that I've learned so far this year.
How do you feel about going into the next race, round 5?
Round 5, it's just going to be another whole learning process. Hopefully we'll be at a more competitive pace than this weekend, but yeah, just every time we go out to the racetrack, it's going to be a learning experience, and I'm always looking forward to it. I'll answer anything.
I'll answer anything.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
And he said he'll answer anything, so that's an open invitation.
Oh, here. What aspects of your job do you like the most?
Good question.
I like the people that I work with. I mean, every time I'm on a go-kart team or I'm racing with WorldSpeed Motorsports, I always like to have a good relationship with the coaches and mechanics. They're the guys that work with me. You know, you just want them to like you. So.
Yeah, you definitely want them to like you. You guys really need all this help, because this is an amazing amount of upkeep on these cars, even in between sessions.
Yeah, we're always joking around, like in between sessions. We have this inside joke every weekend. There's always something different. Yeah, it's great. Just always loving the crew. I really appreciate all the hard work that they go through to help keep us on the racetrack.
So what was the inside joke this weekend?
Was to make some money moves.
Okay.
Oh, is that what that post is all about?
Making money moves. I've never heard of Cardi B in my life until Kevin finally told me, just look up Cardi B and the money moves thing. And I listened to it for the very first time, and I didn't really want to listen to it again, but we made some money moves all right this weekend.
Nice.
Yeah. You sure had a ton of waves though. Everybody's saying hi, that's for darn sure.
Hello.
You're not just a race car driver, you're a busy guy. You have a whole life going here.
Yeah. Time to put the controllers away and start doing more stuff. Massive thanks to Jason Shad and his son Gio for just helping me get prepared psychologically for this whole weekend. Yeah, just looking forward to a future project with them. Yeah, they're just such a great team to work out with. Saw a lot of psychological things that go on in your head when you're on the simulator. It's really cool that you get to apply the techniques and the ideas from the simulator directly into the race car.
They all like to wave. They like to do that to me too. Or they tell me to go find the Lamborghini.
Yeah, I mean, the road to Formula One is just so difficult because it's supposed to be the racing series for the best drivers in the world. It's what a lot of people aspire to do, but at the same time, like only 22 drivers in the world can do this. It's even hard to just get one race in. I went to the Allenberg Racing School. Allenberg raced Formula One for pretty much a single race, and that was his one chance to prove himself. Yeah, things didn't quite go to plan for him, but he still made it to Formula One, which is a big accomplishment.
Every weekend spent with the team gets better and better. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world right now than under the World Speed tent, and I don't even get to race. There's something truly special about Formula Racing and the people behind it. I'm beginning to understand what draws them here, and I can't wait to show you, so I hope you'll hit that subscribe button. Take this journey down the road to Formula One dreams with us and a new friend that we can't wait to cheer on. We believe in Kyle, we're huge fans, and you can be too. Support Kyle by following him on Instagram @KyleLoh5.